Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start on critical thinking, and I don't have something to project here for that, so Kazra, when you're listening, you could just kind of follow along in your binder. So for you girls, you can go ahead and turn to page 70. So page 70 in the clear thinking, critical thinking, and clear writing section. So that's in chapter 3, page 70. So last week we talked about the 3 things to avoid, basically, and the way to fix that, essentially. In order to have clear writing, you want to get rid of vagueness. Do you guys remember how to define vagueness, basically? What is vagueness?
A topic we can't say with complete certainty.
Yeah, basically something that is not clear. So we had some examples of it, like if I said, if I, like the one on page 65, if I said anything which implies that I think we didn't do what we should have done given the choices we faced at that time, I shouldn't have said that. That's very vague. Like we don't know what it's talking about. So the vague, if something is vague, it is incomprehensible. So not able to be understood. Not able to be understood by logic, basically. Now, ambiguous or ambiguity is a little bit different. Ambiguity means it could have 2 or more meanings. Like if I said, there's an example of it that says, the Joe Biden is not pleased with this book. Well, by that, it could mean that he's not pleased with the book, meaning he doesn't like it, or he's not pleased with it, meaning he hasn't seen it. It's not even on his radar. So ambiguity means there are 2 different ways that you could read it. So if I said, for example, he ran only a mile versus he only ran a mile, that's ambiguous because if I say he only ran a mile, that has the idea that maybe he walked some of it. He only ran a mile versus he ran only a mile. 2 different meanings to it. So that could be ambiguous as well. So ambiguity means it could have 2 or more meanings. Vagueness means that you can't understand it based off of logic. So both of these can be solved by something called specificity. So specificity is just being as specific as possible and having as many details as possible, pretty much. So the more details you have, the better people will be able to understand you. So let's go ahead and turn to page 70 if you're not already there. So we talked about semantic ambiguity. So semantic ambiguity is pretty much where you have a word or a phrase that's not clear. Now, syntactic ambiguity comes from the word syntax, which hopefully you guys remember what that means. Do you remember what syntax means? It's the name of the class. No. So syntactic ambiguity comes from syntax. Syntax is how sentences are constructed. So syntactic ambiguity, that confusion comes when you have the structure of the sentence that's confusing, basically. So let's read a little bit about this on page 70. It says that syntactic ambiguity occurs when a claim is open to 2 or more interpretations because of the structure, that is, the syntax. Not long ago, one of us received information from the American Automobile Association prior to driving to British Columbia, and it said to travel in Canada, the brochure stated, you will need a birth certificate or a driver's license and other photo ID. So, what is the requirement for crossing the border? Under one interpretation, you have to have a photo ID other than a birth certificate or a driver's license, and in another, you don't. If we group by brackets, we can make the 2 interpretations clear. So it says, you could say you will need a birth certificate or a driver's license, and number 2, a photo ID, or you will need a birth certificate or a driver's license and other photo ID. It's very confusing. So the problem with the original version of the claim is that because of its poor construction, we don't know whether to associate the driver's license requirement with the birth certificate or with the other photo ID. So one way to fix that at the bottom of the page, it says you will need either a birth certificate or a driver's license, and you will also need an additional photo ID. Or you could say you will need either a birth certificate or both a driver's license and a photo ID. So just by the addition of like a short phrase or even just a word, you make it so much clearer. Now, this kind of ambiguity is really hard to spot in your own writing. It really is. Because you know what you mean, of course, but it might be unclear to someone who's reading it. So neither of those that I just read are ambiguous. They're both pretty clear. So in the previous example, the problem was produced by a failure to make clear how the logical words or and were to apply. Here are some other examples. So players with beginner skills only may use court 1. So here, it's the word only that's confusing. What are the two ways to read this sentence? What two ways can we read the word only? What part of the sentence could it go with?
Oh, like players with beginner skills only may use court 1.
Yeah.
Or we could do players with beginner skills only may use court 1.
Right. So it could be beginner skills only, or they only may use court 1. Now I'm guessing they probably mean the second one, that that they could only use court 1, but that's not clear. So an easy way to fix that would just be to say players with beginner skills may use only court 1. That would be better. Or saying players with only beginner skills may use court 1. Either way, it's kind of an awkward sentence. Now the second one is called a misplaced modifier. Susan, I'm on page 71. Susan saw the farmer with binoculars. Now, what are the two ways to read that? Does the farmer have binoculars, or did she see the farmer while she was looking through binoculars? That's the ambiguity part of it. We don't know whether it was the farmer who had the binoculars or whether Susan had the binoculars and she saw the farmer. How about the next one? People who protest often get arrested. Or is it people who protest often get arrested? So the two ways of reading that are basically saying, okay, do they protest often, or do they often get arrested? So how would we fix that one if we wanted to say that they protest often? Where would we put often?
Before protest?
Yeah, you could say people who often protest get arrested, or people who protest get arrested often. And either way is okay. So there's somebody in the bed next to me has two very different meanings. The first one that we probably immediately thought of was that there's a person in the same bed who is laying next to me. The second one is there's a bed next to me and there's somebody in that bed. So both they're very different, kind of funny. Okay, so also ambiguity can come just from an unclear pronoun reference. Like if I said the boys chased the girls and they giggled a lot, we don't know whether the boys are giggling or the girls are giggling. So we need to have a clear pronoun reference as well. So I like these quotes at the bottom of the page, making ambiguity work for you. So this is kind of funny, the examples here. These are not meant to be taken seriously. So have you ever been asked to write a letter of recommendation for a friend who was, well, incompetent? To avoid either hurting your friend's feelings or lying, Robert Thornton of Lay University has some ambiguous statements you can use. Here are some examples. See, Esther, can you read a few of those for me?
I most enthusiastically recommend this candidate with no qualifications whatsoever.
So there are two ways to read that. The first is what he is trying to pretend like he's meaning, which is that he has no qualifications, meaning he has no hesitation at all in recommending it. The other way of reading it is that the candidate has no qualifications whatsoever, and it's kind of funny. How about the second one, Esther?
I am pleased to say that this candidate is a former colleague of mine.
So what are the two ways of reading that one? I am pleased to say that this candidate is a former colleague of mine. What if we emphasize the word former? Then what would his meaning be of that?
That he or she died.
Oh no! Oh, not quite that bad. Basically that he's happy that it's a former colleague and not a current colleague.
Okay.
And then what the other meaning is, of course, that like, oh, he was pleased to work with him. But this one he's emphasizing, I'm glad that it's a former colleague of mine. The next one, I can assure you that no person would be better for the job. What are the two ways of reading this? Obviously, the clear one that would be signifying that he's the best person for the job. Now, what would the other reading of it be?
That no person.
Yeah, that literally no one, like having no one in that position would be better than having this person in that position. Next one, I would urge you to waste no time in making this candidate an offer of employment. So there's the nice way of reading it, which is that, oh, you should hurry in making this candidate an offer of employment. What would be the other way of reading this?
Don't even offer them employment.
Yeah, don't waste any time offering this to them. And then the second to last one, all in all, I cannot say enough good things about this candidate or recommend the candidate too highly. So normally when we say, oh, I can't say enough good things about them, it means you have so many good things to say about them that you can't get all the words in. This one, he could also be meaning what?
That
There's literally nothing to say, and he cannot recommend this candidate. And then the last one, in my opinion, you will be very fortunate to get this person to work for you. So the nice way of saying it is that you'll be fortunate to have this person in your office. And the not so nice way of saying it, this one's a little harder.
It's very hard to get this person to work.
Yeah, that you'll be lucky if they work at all, basically, is what he's saying. So that one's that one's pretty great. Okay, and then the last one we want to talk about, other than vagueness and ambiguity, is generality. Generality. Oh no, where'd my thing go? Oh, it's over here. Okay, so generality is something you also want to avoid. So generality is kind of like vagueness and ambiguity. Only I would say it's actually a little bit more egregious than the other two. Vagueness and ambiguity, a lot of times you can look at the context to figure out what it means. Generality, you have to fix it by adding specifics. That's the only way you can fix generality. So let's read a little bit about this. So we must turn now to the notion of generality, which is closely related to both vagueness and ambiguity, and which can cause trouble in the same way that they do. So from what we've learned of vagueness, we realize that the word child is vague, since it's not clear where the line is drawn between a child and no longer being a child. It can also be ambiguous because it can refer not only to a person of immature years, but also to a person's offspring. Like if my mom might say, like, my child, this is my child, Candace. I'm 28 years old. Obviously, I'm not like a child, but I'm her child. I'm her daughter. So that could be ambiguous as well. As if this weren't enough, it's also general because it applies to both boys and girls. Generality is a lack of specificity. The more different kinds of X's to which the word X applies, the more general it is. Regarding specific words and phrases, the more different kinds of X's to which a word applies, the more general the word X is. More has a dog is more general than more has an otter hound. More has a pet is still more general. So if you learn that Clarence has an arrest record, it may well lower your estimate of him and may prevent you from hiring him to do work around your house, for example. But if some more detail were supplied, for instance that he had been arrested during a protest against a company that was polluting the local river, it might well make a difference in your opinion of him. The difference between a very general description and one with more specificity can be crucial to nearly any decision. So you want to be as much as possible as specific as you can. And I've mentioned this before, but that's only because it's really important. So the more specific you are, the better and stronger your writing is going to be, and the better and stronger your just way of thinking is going to be. If you can learn to force yourself to be specific, it's a hard exercise to do because our brains don't like it. Our brains like to be very general. They like to take the easy way out. But I can't emphasize how important it is to be specific, especially in your own thinking. So if you're thinking, I don't like her because she's rich. Okay, well, first of all, what do you mean by rich? Do you not like her because literally she has, $1 million, or perhaps you don't like her because she has things which you want to have that you don't have. So you want to try to, in your own thinking, even in your own brain, to try to figure out what you mean basically by what you're thinking, by the words. Let's see. Okay, look at the top of page 73. Top of page 73. Anyhow, with all these potential pitfalls to clear thinking and clear communication, what is a critically thinking person to do? To start, we can do the best we can to be clear in what our words mean. So after the following exercises, we will turn our attention to the definition of terms. So these are the 3 problems, and the way to fix them are through 2 different ways. One of them is specificity. How do we achieve specificity? One of the ways is by definition. So definition is a form of specificity to just make something as specific as possible. So there's lots of different ways to do that, but definition is one of the clearest and one of the best. So let's go ahead and do exercise 3.1. So Kazra, if you're paying attention, we're on page 73. So the lettered words and phrases that follow each of the fragments vary in their precision. In each instance, determine which is the most precise and which is the least precise, and then rank the remainder in order of precision to the extent possible. If these exercises are discussed in class, you'll discover that many of them leave room for disagreement. So basically what you're doing is you are trying to determine which is most precise and least precise. Okay, so let's look at the example. Over the past 10 years, the median income of wage earners in St. Paul, so it goes from least to most specific, nearly doubled, increased substantially, increased by 85.5%, increased by more than 85%. So obviously the most specific would be D, of course. I'm sorry, C rather, because it's the most specific percentage. The least specific would be B, increased substantially. What does the word substantially mean? Well, it's different for every person. Nearly doubled is a little bit more precise. More than 85% is quite a bit more precise, and then increased by 85.5% is the most precise out of all. Okay, let's try to do some of these on our own. So look at number 1. Eli and Sarah decided to sell their home and move, made plans for the future, considered moving, talked, discussed their future, discussed selling their house. Okay, so what would be the most vague, basically? Talked. So you could put a D, or a number 1 by it, I guess. Then what would be the next most vague? Discuss their future, right? We're still not very specific here. Good. So that would be number 2. What would be number 3?
Made plans for the future.
Made plans for the future. Good. That'd be number 3. Number 4? Considered moving. Good. Number 5? Discuss selling their house. And then number 6? Good. Decided to sell their house and move. Good. All right. Manuel, rather. So Manuel, we have worked in the yard all afternoon, spent the afternoon planting flowers in the yard, was outside all afternoon, spent the afternoon planting salvia alongside his front sidewalk, spent the afternoon in the yard.
One is was outside all.
Good. C is 1. He was outside all afternoon. What would be number 2? Would it be A or E? E, good. E is number 2. Number 3 would be A, of course. What would be number 4?
B.
B, and then the most specific, number 5, would be D. Good. All right, the American Civil War was the bloodiest in American history, resulted in the highest percentages of death of U.S. males of any war, saw 10% of northern males and 30% of southern young males lose their lives, resulted in the deaths of approximately 750,000 soldiers north and south. So, what would be the most vague?
A.
A would be the most vague. Good. How about next?
B.
B. Good. And then
C.
D.
I would say D because C is a little bit more specific. Although, that one's a little tough because they both are specific numbers, but in C you actually don't know. Actually, I think I would say D and then C because C the fact that they lost 10% of northern males like total and 30% of southern males total, that's a pretty shocking statistic. And it's even more shocking than just saying 750,000 soldiers, which is a lot, but when you think of that's, 40%, or not 40, but that's a huge percentage of all the population of the time, that's pretty significant. Okay. Let me have you guys do, let's see, Esther, why don't you do 4 and 5? And then Hannah, go ahead and do 6 and 7. And then Kazra, if you're following along, I guess you can do 8 and 9, just quietly there. Okay, so Esther, for number 4, what'd you get? So the recent changes in the tax code. Okay, what's the most vague?
C.
Oh, C, good. Yeah, I was looking at B. Yeah, correct. And then next, number 2.
D.
Good. Number 3.
E.
Good. 4.
A.
And 5.
B.
Good, good. And then number 5, Smidley is absent because?
The most vague is B.
Good, good.
And then A.
Mm-hmm.
Then E.
Mm-hmm.
C.
Mm-hmm.
And D.
Good, excellent, very good. Okay, Hannah, number 6. Candace?
Most vague is B.
Mm-hmm.
Then D.
Mm-hmm.
Then E.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I would say A and then E. So her hometown, and then specifically to visit her mother. And then the last one?
C.
C, good. And then Hurricane Sandy.
C is the most vague.
Mm-hmm.
A.
Yes, A and then E, good.
And then B.
Mm-hmm.
And then D.
Right, good, excellent. Okay, go ahead and turn to page 75. We'll just do a little bit of this. So I want you to tell me whether it's vague, ambiguous, or just not useful because of either of these faults. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Full implementation of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, will cause a noticeable decrease in health care costs. So remember, vagueness is basically you can't tell based off of the words that are there what it's actually saying specifically. So is there any vagueness in number 1?
No.
I would say it's completely vague. It's 100% vague. Because what does noticeable decrease mean? I mean, for different people, it's different things. A noticeable decrease for some people could be $10. Other people, it could be $100, so it's not specific enough. So this would be too vague. You can put just a V next to it if you want. Number 2, and again, we're on page 75. Number 2, I would not advise going to Raymond's party. He invites all kinds of people to those things.
It's vague.
It's vague because what do we mean by all kinds of people? It's unclear. Sign in store window, help wanted.
It actually depends, because help wanted in what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's possible it's a little ambiguous. Yeah, I mean, technically, I guess you could think of the 2 definitions of the word want to. Help wanted meaning help needed, or they have a lack of help. I'm not sure. This one I think is probably, it's either okay or ambiguous. He chased the girl in his car. Ambiguous, because is the girl in the car or is he in the car chasing the girl who's not in the car? Remember, you have an appointment tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, I would say maybe a little vague. It's pretty clear. It depends. It depends on whether you want to define what tomorrow afternoon means, basically. Number 6, the new tax ban will only affect rich people. Vague. Good, good. He gave her cat food. Or he gave her cat food. Ambiguous. That one's funny. Professional football needs new rules about excessive violence in the game. Yes, it's vague. What's vague about number 8?
Like what excessive violence?
Yeah.
Like what new?
Well, yeah, what rules and also what does excessive mean in this context? Some people would think excessive violence is any kind of like pushing or shoving. Other people would say like a concussion is excessive violence. Okay, good. All right, let's turn to the next page, 3-3, page 76. So which of each set suffers least from excessive vagueness, ambiguity, or generalization? So you're basically saying the one that's better. So you could just put a check mark by it or something like that. Okay, number 1, Rooney served the church his entire life. Rooney's tennis serve is impossible to return. Let's see. For the one that's okay. Yeah, I would say B is more specific because we know exactly what it's talking about when it's talking about the serve in B. The first one is not quite as clear what it means by serve the church his entire life. So it's a little bit vague. So it doesn't say how, it doesn't say in what capacity, what does it mean by entire life? Yeah. Okay, number 2. The window served its purpose. The window served as an escape hatch. B, good. Throughout their marriage, Alfredo served her dinner. Or throughout their marriage, Alfredo served her well. B. A. Yeah, A. Minta turned her ankle. Minta turned to religion. A, yes. So turn to religion is a little bit vague. These scales will turn on the weight of a hair. This car will turn on a dime. This one's tough. I would say technically A, because A is literal. So a literal scale will, so the weight of a hair will make it more heavy, or it'll make it out of sync. The car will turn on a dime. Well, yes, that probably means the car has a good turning radius, but what's a good turning radius for one car might not be a good turning radius for another. Okay, let's do a couple more here. Fenner's boss turned vicious. Fenner's boss turned out to be 47. B, good. Time to turn the garden. Time to turn off the sprinkler. B, good. The wine turned to vinegar. The wine turned out to be vinegar. B, good, good. Okay, excellent. All right, we'll go ahead and stop there with critical thinking. Let's move on to syntax. So this will be the lesson that I gave you today, the one that starts with from Strawberry Road. So, Kazra, you won't have this yet. I have a copy when you come back tomorrow. But this is basically what we're going to be doing for the next couple weeks. We have this, plus we have some new essay materials. So what this is a professionally written paragraph, and they have taken it out of a kind of cohesive paragraph form, and they've put it into these separate sentences. So here, Strawberry Road by Yoshimi Ishikawa, is an actual story. And if we read up at the top, it tells us a little bit about the background. So sitting on a Los Angeles pier after immigrating from Japan. Oh, sorry. We're on the lesson that I gave you today. Let's see. Do you remember where you put that one? It should be at the very beginning of what I gave you. Here, I'll help you. It can be kind of tough. So it's after critical thinking. Oh, it might actually be. Is it in your in that binder maybe?
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, that just looks like. Oh, did I not give it to you? Oh yeah, I have an extra copy. So that means I should not have an extra copy. Okay. So do you have different sections in here? Okay, you do. Okay, perfect. So I'll put it here. Okay. All right. There we go. That's better. Okay. And do you guys need paper or do you have paper? Do you need a piece? Oh, okay. All right. So, sitting on a Los Angeles pier after immigrating from Japan to America, Yoshimi Ishikawa felt absolutely lost. Not long after, however, he began to learn about America from the ground up, working as a farm laborer in California's strawberry fields. He also took courses in an American high school to learn English. So, we're going to read the sentences below and try to find kind of the rhythm and pattern. Then we're going to combine sentences. Now, the difference between this and what we did the last couple weeks is they don't give us where to end or where to combine them. You have to figure it out for yourself, basically. So here's the context, and this is part of what was written here. Speech and drama was my only final. The test consisted of reciting a dramatic passage or famous political speech. Talking for 5 minutes in front of an audience was no easy feat, especially in English. I wanted, however, to repay the kindness of my teacher, and I worked on my speech for days. I had chosen John F. Kennedy's inaugural speech, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get past the 3rd line. Whenever I tried to memorize a few more lines, I would forget what I had learned. In spite of this, I prepared assiduously for the final, which would take place in the school auditorium. Okay, so let's go ahead and read a little bit of this. So there are 34 total sentences here. So let's look at the first few for now. So, Americans must be able to express themselves. This class is good preparation for life. The basic philosophy seems simple enough. Make sure others listen to you. This is before you listen to them. It is a key to how America was formed by people. The people spoke such different languages. Unity comes about much more speedily. You force your way of thinking upon others. You make them listen to you. This is something at which Anglo-Saxons excel. America makes an impression on foreigners. The impression is violent. This is a result not just of its high crime rate, this is a result of the nature of conversation here. And then on 16, the conversation is one-sided. The power to persuade is a weapon. The power to be eloquent is a weapon. One needs weapons to survive in America. Therefore, every high school has facilities. The high schools are American. The facilities are for public speaking. The exam began. The students got up on stage one by one. They recited speeches or soliloquies. These were from famous plays. I felt bewitched by the power of English speech. One of the students recited a speech by Hamlet. The student was less bright. He sounded superb. Exclamations arose from the audience. Our teacher was taking notes. She was at the foot of the stage. Finally, it was my turn. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is try to figure out, okay, what is the most logical way to combine these? So out of the first, let's say 10 or so, where should we break the first sentence probably? And there can be more than one answer.
4 and 5.
So maybe, okay, so combine 4 and 5, you mean? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Okay, so we can break there. So can we combine 1 through 5, or should we break one other time? I think we should probably break after 2. So combine 1 and 2, and then 3, 4, and 5. And what about up through 10, I guess? So what about a 6? What can we combine 6 with? What should we combine number 6 with?
7.
I would combine 6 and 7. Good. And then I would combine 8, 9, and 10 together. And then I would combine 11 through 15. I think you can definitely do that. Okay. All right. So let's try to combine these sentences. So we'll move on to the next few in a second. So let's do the first few together, and then I might have you guys do some on your own. So if we look at number 1, so we have Americans must be able to express themselves. Now, how can we combine that with number 2? We could put a word at the beginning here. What word could we put there?
Either, I have 2 choices, like either this class or for life.
I was thinking like because or since. Maybe since Americans must be able to express themselves, and then I'd put the rest. This class was good preparation for life. Okay, now if we were going to try to figure out what parts of the sentence this has, what would be to express themselves? Starts with an I. Infinitive. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll try to put let's put some colors on it to make sense. Infinitive, good. And then we have for life. What would for life be? Yeah, preposition. Good. Okay, so that's preposition. And then what would since Americans must be able to express themselves? That whole thing is dependent clause. Good, good. Okay, good. All right, good. So we have this class was good preparation is basically the main part of your sentence. Okay, good. All right, so that's 1 and 2. Now let's look at 3, 4, 5. The basic philosophy seems simple enough. Make others listen to you. This is before you listen to them. Now, this is some practice maybe we can get with doing something a little bit different. Let's try doing a infinitive phrase that comes between the subject and verb. So let's have the basic philosophy. Now, what infinitive could we put here that tells us what the basic philosophy is? Actually, we could put also a gerund here, which is a gerund. Remember, what is a gerund? Do you guys remember? It ends in ing, good, ing, and it functions like a noun. So let's make it function like in a positive here. So the basic philosophy, which is what? So 4 and 5 basically tell us what it is. So how would we put it into a gerund form? What ing word would we put there? Making. Yeah, making sure others listen to you. Now what would we put after that? Others listen to you. Yeah, before you listen to them. Seems simple enough. So this whole thing here, making sure others listen to you before you listen to them, well, it has a few prepositional phrases and also an infinitive, but the whole thing basically is functioning like a positive. So we'll make it P for a positive. Okay, and then the rest of it is just a regular sentence. Okay, now let's look at 6 and 7. It is a key to how America was formed by people. The people spoke such different languages. Now, I want to challenge you to try to think of another word other than it to use here. So it can be a little bit weak sometimes. And again, we're not sure what it refers back to. So let's say this, and then what is it referring back to? What's the key it's talking about?
7.
Right, the philosophy, basically. Oh, no, sorry, not 7. It's referring back to the basic philosophy. So what's the key? The philosophy. So we can say this idea is the key, or a key, I guess, to how America was formed by people. What can we put after that?
That spoke different languages.
Okay, true. But when you are referring to people, you don't say that. You say people who. Yeah, people who spoke such different languages. Good. Okay. So here we have a prepositional phrase by people. And then we also have who spoke such different languages, which is functioning as what?
Dependent clause.
Dependent clause. Good, good. And then this whole thing, to how America was formed, blah, 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 is technically a prepositional phrase, but to how America was formed is also another dependent clause. It's a little bit confusing. So if you want to get real complicated, this is a prepositional phrase, the whole thing, to all the way to the end of a sentence. But within this prepositional phrase, we have a dependent clause, and within that dependent clause, we have another dependent clause. So it can get kind of complicated, but yeah. All right, so let's do 8, 9, and 10, and then I'm going to have you guys try the kind of challenging one, 11 through 15. So if you look at 8, 9, and 10, unity comes about much more speedily. You force your way of thinking upon others. You make them listen to you. Actually, you know what? Let's add. Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, we'll just leave it as is. That's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how to start off the sentence. Let's just start off with how they have it. Unity comes about much more speedily. What could we put after that? How do we combine 9 and 10 to number 8? So unity comes about much more speedily.
If you force your way.
Yeah. If you force your way of thinking upon others, and yeah, or just make them listen to you. Good. Good, excellent. Now here, what do we have as far as phrases go here?
From if is dependent clause.
Yep, this whole thing's a dependent clause, right? Within the dependent clause, we have a few other things, but it's a dependent clause. Good. Okay, excellent. All right, go ahead and try to combine 11 through 15 on your own piece of paper. Actually, you know what? Let me combine. I think 11 is going to be a little bit tough to combine. So if you want to, you can add it at the end of the sentence as an appositive phrase. You can say a way, or let's see, if you a truly Anglo-Saxon talent. Okay, something like that. You could add it to the end of there. That way you don't have to worry about it for the rest, because it might be a little bit difficult. Let's see. Okay. All right, so go ahead and then just combine 11 through 15 then. I'm sorry, 12 through 15. Okay, so Hannah, what'd you do how'd you combine these sentences?
America's violent impression on foreigners is the result of its high crime rate and the nature of the conversation.
Good. Yeah, that definitely works. Esther, do you have it yet, or are you still working on it?
Okay, I think I have it.
Okay.
Okay. America makes a violent impression on foreigners, resulting not just of its high crime rate, but resulting in the nature of conversation.
Yeah, I think that's good. I would okay, read one more time what you have after an impression on foreigners. So makes a violent impression on foreigners.
Resulting not just of its high crime rate, but resulting of the nature of conversation.
Oh, just take out the second resulting. Yeah, the by putting in the second resulting, it makes it not parallel. So yeah, easy fix. Okay, good. All right, now for the others, 16 through 34, the conversation is one-sided. The power to persuade is a weapon. The power to be eloquent is a weapon. One needs weapons to survive in America. So I think we can probably put all those together in one sentence. And then where would we break the next sentence? So 16 through 18, and then where would we break the sentence after that? I would say, I think we could probably go through 22. And then after that, I actually would leave 23 intact. Just say the exam began. And then after that, I put 24 through, and then where would you guys break the next sentence?
26.
I would say 26, good. Then I would leave 27 by itself. Again, sometimes it's okay to have one sentence just intact. And then 28 through what? 31. And then I'd put 32 and 33 together and then leave 34 intact. Okay, so let me break this up so it's not quite just one person doing all of it. So let's see, let me have Hannah, why don't you take the 16 through 18? And then Esther, why don't you take 19 through 21? Through 22, right? And then Hannah, go ahead and take 24 through 26. And then Esther, 28 through 31. And then Kazra, you can kind of just pick whichever ones you want and do that on your own paper. And whatever you write down, Kazra, I'll collect tomorrow. Feels weird talking to him. He's not here. Okay, Hannah, for 16 through 18, what'd you put for those?
I don't think this is right, but I said this conversation is one-sided because the power to persuade and be eloquent is a weapon.
Yeah, that's okay. Especially if we didn't have 1 through 15 as context, that would definitely work. I think we probably should have put 16 with 15, but the way you did it was perfectly fine. Yeah, that's totally okay. And then 19 through 22, Esther, do you have that?
Yeah. One needs weapons to survive in America. Semicolon.
Good, good.
Therefore, every American high school has facilities for public space.
Perfect. Excellent. And then I would leave 23. The exam began. And then, Hannah, what do you have after that?
As the students got up on stage one by one, they recited speeches or
Soliloquies.
soliloquies from famous plays.
Good. I felt bewitched by the power of English speech. And then, Esther, once you're done, let me know, and I'll have you read the last couple.
Okay. One of the students who recited a speech by Hamlet was less bright, but sounded superb.
Good, excellent. And then you could probably keep 31 just on its own. Exclamations arose from the audience. Our teacher, who was taking notes at the foot of the stage, finally told me it was my turn. We could do that for the end. Okay, excellent. All right, let's go ahead and move on to essay writing. So if you skip ahead to where it says the third step in essay writing, and again, Kazra, you don't have this in your binder, but you'll get it tomorrow. So the first two steps in writing are basically to figure out your topic and your thesis, and then number 2, to find information. So topic and then information. So here we have different things to pay attention to. So are advancing a thesis and supporting it with specific evidence. So this is about the third step, which is organizing and connecting the supporting information in a paragraph. You'll also learn how to start an essay with a suitable introductory paragraph and how to finish it with a concluding paragraph. So organization is really important. I've used the analogy of the highway before. I want to use a different analogy today. Think of your essay like a puzzle, okay, or any type of writing like a puzzle, really. Okay, so when you're doing a puzzle, you know what the big picture is. Like, you know what you're trying to go for. So if you have a puzzle that has like a tree in it, you know that you're trying to find puzzle pieces that fit it in order to make this image of the tree. You can also have, different, whatever it is. So the puzzle piece is what someone created, and what they did is they made sure that you knew what the whole picture was going to be. Now, think of this puzzle, the whole thing, the image, as what you want to present to the reader. So this is what you want your reader to see at the end. Now, just like any puzzle, in order to understand sort of what makes up each part, you need to make sure that it has all the pieces together. So if it doesn't have all the pieces together, it's not going to make a lot of sense. So if we have a puzzle and it's clearly missing a piece, right in the middle here, people are going to notice. It's kind of like cleaning your room. Your mom doesn't notice when it's clean, but she sure notices when it's not clean. It's kind of the same thing with an essay. People might not notice when you have all the pieces here, but they'll notice if there's something missing. So this is where the struggle with writing comes. So you'll know when you're reading it that something's missing, but sometimes it's hard to kind of figure out what that is. You can maybe figure it out in other people's writing, but in your own it's kind of hard. So think of each puzzle piece like a part of the essay. So one part of it is your thesis statement. Another one is details. Then you have transitions. You have organization. You have syntax. You have paragraphs. You have the introduction, the conclusion. All these are elements which work together to make this big picture that you're trying to create. And it's hard. It's really hard. It's not easy to write an essay. It's not an easy task because all these different pieces you have to kind of juggle together and put them in the right way to put the picture of what you're trying to present. And the worst part about it, not the worst, but one of the most frustrating is probably when the person's reading it. It takes them 10 minutes to read it, and maybe it took you hours and hours to actually put the work into it. But that's a good thing. I always say that good writing is read very quickly. So the reason why you probably have, you read fiction for hours and hours at a time, you read it very quickly, is probably because it's written simply and well. The reason why, like a textbook, for example, takes you a little bit longer to read is because it's very dense, like it's very concentrated. So good writing should be read fairly easily. No one should ever have to go back and try to figure out what you were trying to say. Everything needs to work together to make the image that you're trying to project to your reader. And so this is an analogy that you can think of. So each of these pieces are things that we're learning. So we've already learned your thesis. We've learned about finding evidence. We've learned about the importance of specific details and adequate evidence. All those work together. Now we're going to learn about step 3, which is organizing and connecting the specific evidence. So as you're generating the specific details needed to support your thesis, you want to be thinking about ways to organize and connect those details. So everything has to cohere. The word cohere literally means to stick together. So everything has to stick together so that your reader will be able to move smoothly from one bit of supporting information to the next. So this section is talking about how to organize and connect supporting details by using, number 1, common methods of organization, 2, transitions, and 3, other connecting words. So let's talk about common methods of organization. So there are two main types. There are more than these, but these are the most common. The first is time order or chronological, and the second is in importance, basically. Or emphatic order. So if we have here, to exercise successfully, you should follow a simple plan consisting of arranging the time, making preparations, and warming up properly. To begin with, set aside a regular hour for exercise. Next, prepare for your exercise session. And finally, do a series of warm-up activities. So, of course, your transition sentences to signal what kind of organizational pattern. We have to begin with, next, and finally. These are words which show us what we're doing, basically. And they also show us that it's a chronological order. It goes in a specific order. You couldn't do it in a different order and still have it be the same type of meaning. So on the next page, we have a sample paragraph from that essay. Let's see. Hannah, can you read this for me? And then I want you guys to mark as we go the transition phrases, basically.
Next, prepare for your exercise session. You do it first by not eating or drinking anything for an hour before the session. Why risk an upset stomach? Then dress comfortably in something that allows you to move freely. Because you will be in your own home, there is no need to invest in a high fashion dance costume. A loose t-shirt and shorts are good. A bathing suit is great in summer and in winter lawn underwear is warm and comfortable. If your hair tends to flop in your eyes, pin it back or wear a headband or scarf. After dressing, prepare the exercise area. Turn off the phone and lock the door to prevent interruptions. Shove the coffee table out of the way so that you won't bruise yourself on it. Finally, get out the simple materials you will need to exercise on.
Right, so we have in the first line, next, first, then, after, and finally. So all these kind of show when these things need to happen. So this is chronological. Chronological you can use for a how-to essay. You can use chronological for if you're telling about the events that happened either in your own life or in history. Emphatic order, however, is probably what you're mostly going to be using. So emphatic order is the second type of organizational pattern. It's basically saving the best till last. So you start with your least strong point and you end with your strongest point. And it's a way to put emphasis on the most interesting or important detail by placing it at the end. Because, of course, most people, what do they remember about your essay? The end. They remember what comes last. So if we look at the little outline at the bottom, celebrities lead very stressful lives. For one thing, celebrities don't have the privacy of an ordinary person. In addition, celebrities are under constant pressure. And then most important, celebrities must deal with the stress of being in constant danger. So you can probably tell the transition words there. And then let's read this paragraph that's on the next page. Let's see, Hannah, can you read? Oh, no, you just read. Esther, can you read this paragraph?
Most important, celebrities must deal with the stress of being in constant danger. The friendly grabs, hugs, and kisses of enthusiastic fans can quickly turn into uncontrolled assaults on a celebrity's hair, clothes, and car. Celebrities often get strange letters from people who become obsessed with their idols or from people who threaten to harm them. Worst of all, threats can turn into deeds. The attempt to kill Ronald Reagan and the murder of John Lennon came about because two unbalanced people tried to transfer the celebrity's fame to themselves. Famous people must live with the fact that they are always fair game and never out of season.
So we have two transitions, the most important and the worst of all, show us that this is kind of, the pinnacle of the essay. This is the strongest point, and this is the one they're going to want you to remember. So I think those are very strong. All right, go ahead and turn to the next page, page 83. Let's talk briefly about transitional words. So transitions signal the writer's thoughts. They're like road signs that guide travelers. So here are some common transitions below. So certain words work for more than one transition, but you want to kind of commit a lot of these to memory so you're not using the same ones over and over again. So addition signals. So basically this means when you come up with a new point. So you could have, first of all, second, the third reason, also, next, another, and, in addition, moreover, furthermore, finally, last of all. Lots of different ways to use these. So, and now, of course, you can't use them all interchangeably. You can't use two first of alls. Also, I would actually make the point, go ahead and cross in first of all, cross out the of all. I think it's just tacky to say of all, and the same thing with last of all. You don't need the of all part of it. Just have first and then last, and then that's perfectly sufficient. Then we have time signals. First, then, next, after, as, before, while, meanwhile, soon, now, during, finally. And then space signals. Next to, across, on the opposite side, to the left, to the right, above, below, near, nearby. You'll notice a lot of prepositional words in that one. Change of direction signals. But, however, yet, in contrast, although, otherwise, still, on the contrary, on the other hand. So I would say the two most important are the addition signals and then the change of direction signals, because these are probably the most common that you're going to use. And it probably those with illustration signals. So these are ones that you use in most essays. So you use more than one example, so you're going to use the addition ones, and you also probably use some kind of contrasting examples, then you're going to use the change of directions one. And then the last one, illustration signal, is when you're giving an example. So you have for example, for instance, specifically as an illustration, once, and such as. And then conclusion, therefore, consequently, thus, then, as a result, in summary, to conclude. Last of all, again, cut out the of all part, and then finally. So those are all helpful. And again, they're not helpful unless you actually remember to use them. So I'm not saying you have to memorize the list, but it's not a bad idea to know them well enough that you can pull one out when you need it, and you don't have to think too hard about it. Okay, so in this one, I'm going to have you guys read this and then try to find the addition signals in this one. So I'll read it out loud, and you guys, as I'm reading it, go ahead and try to find them. So to create the time you need to pass a difficult course, find some easy courses. These are the ones that combine the least amount of work with the fewest tests and the most lenient professors. One way to find such courses is to ask friends and classmates about courses in which they received A's after attending only 25% of the class. Also inquire around to see which instructors lecture with the same notes every year and give the same tests. Photocopies of the class notes are usually cheap and widely available. Another great way of finding simple courses is to pick up a copy of the master schedule and study it carefully. Find the telltale course titles that signal an easy glide through a painless subject. Look for titles like History of the Animated Cartoon, Arts and Crafts for Beginners, and Rock Music of the 1950s. By the way, this is just a terrible paragraph as far as the message that they're sending. So what are the three addition signals that we have?
One way.
Yeah, one way. Good. What else? Also.
And
Another. Good. Good. And those are the three kind of addition signals. Good. Okay. Then we have the next paragraph. So here you're looking for time. After you've snagged the job of a TV sports reporter, you have to begin working on the details of your image. First, invest in 2 or 3 truly loud sports jackets. Look for gigantic plaid patterns and odd color combinations like purple and green or blue and orange. These should become familiar enough to viewers so that they will associate that crazy jacket with that dynamic sportscaster. Next, try to cultivate a distinctive voice that will be just annoying enough to be memorable. A nasal whine or a gravelly growl will do it. Be sure to speak only in tough, punchy sentences that seem to be punctuated with imaginary exclamation points. Finally, you must share a lot of pompous, obnoxious opinions with your viewers. Your tone of voice must convey the hidden message, I dare anyone to disagree with me. If the home team loses, call them bums. If players strike, talk sarcastically about the good old days. If a sports franchise leaves town, say good riddance. So what do we have here?
After.
After, good.
First.
First.
Next.
Next.
Finally.
Finally, good. Good. All right. Now, of course, these are kind of silly paragraphs, but you get the idea. Okay, the next one here. So this one is talking about, this is also time-space signals. Space signals. So the vegetable bin of my refrigerator contained an assortment of weird-looking items. Next to a shriveled, fuzz-coated lemon were 2 oranges covered with blue fuzz. To the right of the oranges was a bunch of carrots that had begun to sprout points, spikes, knobs, and tendrils. The carrots drooped into U shapes as I picked them up with the tips of my fingers. Near the carrots was a net bag of onions. Each onion had sent curling shoots through the net until the whole thing resembled a mass of green spaghetti. The most horrible item, though, was a head of lettuce that had turned into a pool of brown goo. It had seeped out of its bag and coated the bin with a sticky, evil-smelling liquid. First of all, I just want to point out the though there. It's not one of the transitions they want you to look for, but though is a contrasting transition that can be used very well. So keep that in mind. Though, kind of like however, is a good thing to just use for like a short contrast. Okay, so what do we have as far as our space transitions? Next to, good.
To the right.
To the right.
Near.
Near, good. Excellent. Okay, let's try to do, we have time for one more. Okay, underline the 2 change of direction signals. So here we have taking small children on vacation, for instance, sounds like a wonderful experience for the entire family. But vacations can be scary or emotionally overwhelming times for children. When children are taken away from their usual routine and brought to an unfamiliar place, they can become very frightened. The strange bed in the motel room or the unusual noises in Grandma's spare bedroom may cause nightmares. On vacations, too, children usually clamor to do as many things in one day as they can and to stay up past their usual bedtime. And since it is vacation time, parents may decide to give in to their children's demands. A parental attitude like this, however, can lead to problems. After a 16-hour day of touring the amusement park, eating at a restaurant, and seeing a movie, children can experience sensory and emotional overload. They become cranky, unhappy, or even rebellious and angry. So what do we have here?
For instance.
For instance? That's more an example one, but that works as far as the transition goes. What else do we have? But, good. And then we have at the end, toward the end, I should say. However, right. However is always a good one to use. Okay, good. All right. Let's see. For homework, I might not assign you guys homework since Kazar doesn't have this with him. If you have not done your homework from the weekend, the one where you were writing a very purposefully vague paragraph, go ahead and do that. Were you able to finish that one? Okay, no problem. So if you were able to finish it, great. Don't worry about homework. If you haven't finished it yet, go ahead and finish that paragraph and bring it tomorrow because we will work on that because I do want to talk about including specific information. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and continue tomorrow. So no homework if you finish that. If you haven't finished it, go ahead and do the paragraph that was about something as vague as possible so that we can correct it and make it more specific. All right, you're dismissed.
How long does it have to be again?
Maybe, let's see, how long did I say? I think I said like 4 or 5 sentences. It doesn't have to be long, about the length of a paragraph.
Does everything have to be vague or like just some points of it?
Try to make as much as possible vague.
Okay.
Yeah. So in every sentence there should be at least one vague element that we can fix. Yeah.